Morning, all. Yep, little late getting going, but hey, we'll get there. All right, so I want to talk about the standings, and I took a look at the channel vote for one last time today, and I weighted the scores. So I weighted the scores. So if team got more first or second and more third or fourth, I weighted the scores that way to say, hey, how's the channel predicting that the standings are going to finish up? And it's interesting. So on the left hand side, you've got the points that teams had last year, and I've got them all arranged by last year's standings. In red here, I've got written where the channel's predicting teams end up this year, and it's remarkable. The Central, exactly the same. The Central, absolutely exactly the same, 1 through 8. The Pacific Division, not exactly the same. They have Edmonton finishing ahead of Vegas. And hey, Edmonton was only 2 points back of Vegas, so that's quite possible. And then, yeah, outside of that, it stays the same until you get down to Anaheim being ahead of San Jose. Again, Anaheim was only 2 points behind San Jose, so that's completely reasonable that those two teams would switch spots. So, yeah, things stay almost exactly the same. You end up with, I guess, basically the same matchups in the playoffs, other than that way you'd have Vegas against LA in the first round. In the East, things change because Boston is seen as weaker. So Boston's actually ranked fourth. Toronto's ranked first. Florida number two. Tampa Bay number three. So we get the Battle of Florida in the first round. I'm a big fan. Boston drops to fourth, but still finishes ahead of Buffalo, Ottawa, Detroit, and Montreal, who are voted in the exact same order as they were or as they finished this past season. Then you get to the Metro Division, and it's almost exactly the same. Pittsburgh and the Islanders swap spots. Well, they were only 2 points apart during the regular season. Columbus and Philly swap spots, which is saying something since Columbus was 16 points behind Philadelphia last season. But of course, we know Philadelphia is in that rebuild, likely to get worse, and Columbus is trying to dig their way out. So this is why when I did the 32 previews, I did not include my own predictions in there at all because, I mean, realistically, we all have recency bias. It's something I've talked about, and the voting on the channel is definitely a way to say, hey, look, the recency bias is there. So now, personally, and using the purple marker here, I think Dallas, I do think Dallas ends up winning the Central. In the Pacific, I will get with the channel on that one. I will say I think that the Oilers end up finishing first in the division. Fine. Then you get to the Atlantic. I'll agree with the channel on that one as well, that Toronto wins that division. And then you get to the Metro. I actually like New Jersey to win the Metro. I think New Jersey is first place in the Metro. That absolutely works. Second place then in the Central, I'm going to go with Colorado because it's the Abs. Second place in the Pacific Division, you know, I kind of feel like for Vegas, the regular season this year might be harder for them to get up to, for certain games. The Oilers and the Kings, I think, have more to prove. So I'll say that LA finishes second. Not that Vegas is any weaker or anything, but yeah, I'll say Vegas for second place. Then we get to the Atlantic Division. I'll take Florida. I'll agree with that. Absolutely. Yep. And then second place in the Metro. Yeah, Carolina. So basically, I've only really gone a little bit outside of the realm of likelihood with these picks so far. Now, third place in the Central's tough because you're trying to predict what Winnipeg's going to do. Because Scheifele and Hellebuck are there. If they stay there, then yes, Winnipeg stays fourth in all likelihood. Maybe even moves up to third. But with the uncertainty, even though Minnesota's in the situation they're in with all the cap discussions and whatnot, I still think Minnesota's the third best team in that division. Vegas, I cannot see finishing lower than third in the division. I do think that Tampa Bay can end up third in their division again. Third place seems to be the sweet spot for them. That's where they want to be. Third place then in the Metro. It's tough to go against the Rangers, isn't it? Because the Rangers finished so far ahead of everybody else. Fourth place then in the Central, and this is difficult because, again, you're trying to guess what Winnipeg's going to do, what Nashville's going to do as well, and can St. Louis have a bounce-back season? So I'm going to go a little bit outside of the normal predictions here. I'm going to say St. Louis ends up fourth in the division, has a bounce back from last year. Last year was an off year. Now they don't have some of the distractions they've had over the last couple seasons. And as long as Krug is able to have a bounce back season and there's no hard feelings with them trying to trade him, then yeah, I think St. Louis can be fourth. In the Pacific, between Seattle and Calgary, I think Calgary can jump back up into fourth place. Calgary does tend to have the in the playoffs, out of the playoffs. They overachieve when we don't expect it. So I'll say Calgary ends up in that spot. And then it gets interesting because Boston without Krejci and without Bergeron should still be fourth, but it's going to be really close. I think it's going to be really, really close between them and Buffalo. Buffalo is going to get better. I'm really debating about whether or not to say, hey, Buffalo ends up in the playoffs. But at any rate, I do think we get 5 from the Atlantic and 3 from the Metro as a definite possibility. I think that could happen. I'm not saying it does, but it could. Then fourth place in the Metro, I do agree with the channel on Pittsburgh. So again, you got that recency bias, and then you've got the with Carlson, they should get better idea as well. Then you get to fifth in the Central. I'll go with Winnipeg there. Fifth in the Pacific, I'll go with Seattle. I don't think Seattle falls far below that. And I will also say I could see 5 teams in the Pacific making it and 3 out of the Central. I do think that's possible. Which leaves Buffalo fifth here. The Islanders fifth here. So again, my positioning very similar. Apologies for that, but these things happen. Number 6, I'll go with Nashville. Vancouver ends up 6th. Ottawa ends up 6th, and it's hard to go against Washington in 6th place. And then you get down to the teams that are very likely not going to make it, right? So rounding out the Central Division, Arizona probably ends up 7th. Chicago ends up 8th. I'll agree with Anaheim, San Jose, Detroit, probably ahead of Montreal. Probably because, while they're 12 points separated, I do think Montreal's going to get better this year. And then, I'll agree. So, what did I change? Where was I different? And it really isn't anything major. Same. I have Calgary going ahead of Seattle here. I think St. Louis ending up ahead of Winnipeg and Nashville is a possibility. And those 2 takes would be seen as kind of, wow, that's a really interesting take. But one thing I'll say, and I'll do this as well, teams that we're underrating, potentially underrating, because I know how poorly these things tend to age, right? These things very often age like milk. So who are we underrating? We could potentially be underrating. In the Central, it's tough to say. Maybe Nashville we're underrating a little bit, right? That's a possibility. I will say in the Pacific, we could be underrating Vancouver. Vancouver's made changes on the blue line. They'll have a full year of Rick Tocchet. It's possible things get better. In the Atlantic, I will go with Ottawa. Ottawa's made improvements. They weren't that far below the playoff line. And then in the Metro, I'll go with Washington. They're an older team, but there's the possibility that they have a really strong season, rally around Ovechkin, chasing the record, that kind of thing. And then, as I look for another color I haven't used, so I'll use the dark blue for this. And I'll put up one team that we might be overrating as well. And I'll start with the one that I picked for first. You guys picked for second, Dallas. Why? Dallas putting together back-to-back really, really strong seasons has been an issue before. There's been issues with consistency. I could see Dallas having their struggles at points here and there. And injuries could be an issue as well. And again, this is just that whole thing with trying to predict the upcoming season. It's not easy. And then in terms of overrating, well, we both have the Oilers. Myself and the channel have the Oilers at first as possible. The Oilers are overrated. In the Atlantic, it absolutely could be Toronto. Toronto's made a lot of changes. There's some question marks still with this roster. They're seen as the most likely to finish first in their division, but will they? And then in the Metro, I'll go with Pittsburgh. So I'll say Washington might be underrated and Pittsburgh might be a little bit overrated. But again, that's the question mark, right? Last year we saw the New Jersey Devils just all of a sudden have it all figured out. That could happen I could see that happening with Nashville out of the gate. I could see it happening with the Senators as well. It's going to be a fun season because I guarantee the standings don't end up like this at all. And our recency bias this year will be replaced by a different recency bias next year. And then as I gain more and more of these polls on where the channel thinks teams are going to land, we'll get further into the recency bias thing. But that's going to be further down the road. Not doing that this year necessarily, although we're sitting roughly 40 days out from the start of the regular season. And we're in this odd spot where the really big news isn't really there right now. Guys aren't really in training camp officially yet. And so we're just kind of in a holding pattern. But I figured, why not talk about the standings? Get that conversation going. Which teams do you think are underrated? Which teams do you think are overrated? Do not edit your comment. You can come back to that comment months down the road and say, I was right. Look at that. I had it. Or which teams you think are overrated. And again, you can come back months from now and say, I had it. Everybody was wrong. I was right. Haha. Go me. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And yes, the next time that I go to Anaheim, I'll have a jersey with my name on it. I made Ryan Miller leave the organization clearly by wearing my Miller jersey in the building. I don't want to do that to Anaheim again. All right, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. The entertainment guy had a great day yesterday, too. Maybe that threw my day off today. Gained 150 subscribers on that channel, so that's fantastic. And yeah, thank you guys so much for all your support. I'll talk to you again soon.